In this video, I will be describing how to get gear and how to survive in the Twilight Forest. This is not so much a tutorial on how to defeat the bosses, but more on how to get the supplies and things you need in order to survive and eventually take them down. The only thing you need from the overworld is a single diamond to get to the Twilight Forest, and most likely while you're getting that diamond you'll have obtained some iron. I highly recommend saving that iron and not crafting it into armor or tools or anything, because once you get into the Twilight Forest, you can use that iron to make better armor pretty quickly. Once you get into the Twilight Forest, start looking for easy, free food sources. So the first thing is in small structures, for example, a well. Anytime you see a well, just jump right down, swim straight to the bottom, and if you see an opening with a chest, you can get some free food. And as long as you're fast, you can get up without taking any damage. Only about 50% of wells actually have a chest, so if there's nothing there, just swim back up. The next structure is kind of the ruined foundation of a house, where it's just some stone, cobblestone stuff. So there's a chance there's a secret room underneath. So just break 2 dirt blocks straight down, and if you see an opening, drop down, there's a chest with food. If there's no opening, this one doesn't have it, move on to the next one. Next, I want to talk about these magical cottage things. You see them everywhere, they're super common, and they're only sometimes worth the risk. So they all have spawners that spawn these weird skeleton things that shoot poison seeds at you. And the poison does a lot of damage, so you take a lot of damage when you go in. When you get into the house, there's going to be a few chests. A couple will have food, a couple will be empty. Sometimes there's a second story that also has a chest and a spawner up there. And sometimes there's a basement under the main spawner. When you go into the basement, be careful, some of the chests will be trap chests. You can see this one has some redstone behind it, and if it's a trap, it will have enough TNT to blow you up and destroy all your stuff. So it's up to you if you think it's worth getting the food from here, but the risk of getting hit by the skeletons is pretty annoying. Bringing a dog helps. Also, these things have a ridiculous range, and they will chase you for like 100 meters if you try straight up running away, so they're very annoying. The next way to get food is through normal animals. So in the Twilight Forest, chickens are unchanged. These warthog things are just reskinned pigs. The deer are like cows. They drop venison, which works the same way as steak, but they actually run away from you before you even attack them, so they're a little bit harder to get. And then sheep. Sheep are just the same with multiple colors. There's a chance to get a bonus later in the game if you get one of every color of wool, so I recommend collecting them as soon as you see them. As you're going around gathering food, you want to start looking for live root. So underneath every tree and in caves, there are root blocks, and when you break them, they drop sticks. But occasionally the root blocks are green, and when you break them, you get a live root. When you combine live root with iron ingots and gold nuggets, you get this thing called ironwood. And when you smelt it, first of all, you get 2 of them for each one that you smelt, and it makes armor and tools that's about as good as iron, a little bit better, but it comes enchanted by default. Another basic structure you can find early in the game is the hedge maze. So it just looks kind of like some green leaves in a lit up maze, and there's not much there. It's not really worth your time. So it's designed so you can't break through the blocks, you can't stand directly on them without taking damage, but you can also just bridge on top of it. And there will be a couple chests and a couple spawners that spawn spiders and hostile wolves. There's not much good stuff you can get there, occasionally a golden apple or a diamond hoe, a little bit of food, but mostly junk. Then there are the hollow hills. These are big mounds of just dirt that appear that stick up in the terrain. They come in sizes small, medium, and large. The bigger they are, the more good stuff they have. So the hill is hollow. You dig into it, and there's a cave on the bottom that is all dark. You will occasionally find chests that have good stuff, tons of different bad guys, and if you look up to the ceiling, there will be ores, and in the bigger ones you can find like diamond ore in the ceiling. This can be a really good place to get diamonds. The ground level of the Twilight Forest is much lower than in the overworld, so when you go into a cave, you will immediately begin seeing gold, diamonds. It's not hard to get low enough, and none of the caves have lava. There's no ravines. They're all very simple caves for caving and getting resources. And also there are these blue things called kobolds that you'll find, and they don't do much damage. They don't have any great drops. They're just a little bit annoying. If you take one out, all the others will panic for a couple seconds, so if you're swarmed, that can save you. So you can only fight the bosses in a certain order. If you try to go to their base, it will be blocked. It won't let you through until you've killed the previous one. So the first boss is the Naga. So just look for a big wall made out of stone materials. It's called the Naga courtyard. Go in, and you don't need to be afraid at all. You can do this with just iron armor. A shield helps too, but it does very little damage. It just runs around. If you block it with a shield, it'll be stunned, but just keep hitting it. Its health will eventually go away as long as you have food to regen. There's very little chance that it will take you out. Once you defeat the Naga, it will drop a trophy, which you should keep, and also Naga scales, which can be made into chestplate and leggings. So the chestplate will get Fire Prot 3, and the leggings will get Prot 3, which is definitely worth it, so save them, make leggings. Another tip is that you can get lapis blocks on top of these obsidian pillars that are really common. Once you've defeated a Naga, the next boss that the game lets you fight is the Twilight Lich. You can go into one of these towers. They're very cool looking, tall castles, and it's way harder than fighting the Naga. You want to have a ton of gear and probably have a bed nearby to respawn in case anything goes wrong. You will quickly run into a new mob called the Death Tome. These are floating books that shoot pieces of paper at you. They deal far more damage than the skeleton's arrow, and the mob itself has more health than the skeleton. These things can take you out very quickly. You gotta be careful. As you go into the tower, you'll find some rooms with books. Often they have chests. Sometimes the chests have good stuff, sometimes they're just okayish. And then you'll start going up the main staircase. I highly recommend bringing slabs because the staircase has holes in it, and knowing how life works, you'll tend to fall through them in the middle of a fight, so fill those holes up with slabs. And as you go up, you'll see some skeleton spawners, zombie spawners. Just take those out, light things up on your way up. When you arrive at the top of the tower, the Twilight Lich will spawn. It will make some clones of itself, and initially it has a bunch of shields floating around it. What you need to do is deflect the ender pearls it throws at you back at the shields to break them before you can start attacking it. Be careful if it gets too close, because sometimes it will send explosive projectiles that your shield does not block. You will definitely want to make a Twilight Forest map, for which you need a map focus that involves a raven's feather. You can get that easily from killing any raven. Glowstone, which you can get probably inside the Lich Tower or a hollow hill, and then you also need torchberries, which are in every single cave. Put those together, surround it with paper, and you have a map. And the map shows you where all of the different bosses hang out, where the hollow hills are, and you can use that to go to where you want to. Next, I want to talk about 3 important hostile mobs that the Twilight Forest adds. The beetles. So there's the fire beetle. This one just shoots flames at you. It's pretty easy to defeat if you stand straight in front of it, then the fire keeps knocking you back, but as long as you strafe around to the side, it will hardly ever kill you. Next up is the slime beetle. This one's a little tougher. They shoot slime balls at you like skeletons, but they do a lot more damage. And they have more health than skeletons, but with a few hits you can take them out. If you get really close to them, they will often try to run away rather than shoot you, so you can hit them in the back while they're fleeing. That's their main weakness. But last up is the pincher beetle. And these things are the worst. They grab onto you and squeeze you and damage you. But the problem is they are really glitchy. If you press left shift to dismount, it will get you off of it, but the game thinks you're still on it and you'll keep taking damage, and it's a really bad situation. Also, if one of these puts your head under a block and you start suffocating, there's no way to survive. You're guaranteed to die. So these pincher beetles, they're glitchy. Avoid them at all costs. I wish they weren't in the game. The next boss you can defeat is, well, a labyrinth. So those are in the swamps. You can find them on your map, and you just see kind of like a hollow hill, and then you jump in, and then it's a big maze. So you can't break the maze stone, the block surrounding it, very easily with a pickaxe. Not only does it take forever, but it does like 10 times as much durability as a normal thing would on your pickaxe. But it can be destroyed by creeper explosions, TNT explosions, and you can move it with a sticky piston. So there are ways to cheat through the maze a little bit. But overall, you go through the maze. It's actually bigger than it looks. It's very confusing. You ultimately get down to a lower level. Then the lower level, you get through the maze. You find the final boss, this thing called the Minoshroom, which is a combination between a minotaur and a mushroom. And you can take it out with a bow without even letting it out of its cage, because it's blocked in by default. And at that point, you've kind of defeated the end of the labyrinth. The one other thing is there's a secret room filled with chests. You can only find it by making a map of the maze, by finding a maze map focus. And it's surrounded by sand that's ready to fall on pressure plates and set TNT off. So if you dig into the room the wrong way, the sand will blow all the treasure up. You gotta sneak in from the very bottom, right above bedrock, break the TNT, then you get tons of really, really good treasure. Fun fact, it still rains in the Twilight Forest and the skeletal horsemen can spawn. Who knew?